Welcome to the Dateable AF podcast, because women dating women is wild, wonderful, and occasionally a disaster. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Kyle, a therapist in private practice.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Howell, researcher extraordinaire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our after party episode for episode 13. And this was the episode where we were talking about all she said was, hey, and now you're planning the wedding. Things about people creating a whole fantasy in their head about the person that they just met or just started dating. We got some very interesting feedback about this, actually. Rachel and I both did, from some of our listeners. So we got several people commenting about Rachel's story about the research buckets and about how that, looking at dates 1 through 4 as kind of one phase of dating, and looking at dates 4 through 8 as, another phase of dating, and then 8 and beyond. And just the way that we encourage people to take things slow.
Yeah, I think that I got some good comments, I think, for some people that said it really gave them a bit of a framework to look at. And also helping, it was a good way to see if you were someone who's just skipping right through those phases, like going tiptoe right over the top of them from that phase 1 to phase 3. And it was a good way for people to see some concrete evidence of the things that maybe they didn't do in order to actually know the person better.
Yes, we got a few comments that said, where were you guys 20 years ago when I was dating my partner? Where were you when I was floundering in my relationships? So I love that. I love that we're actually helping people do it a little bit differently. We got a really well thought out question from one of our listeners who is a therapist. And she said, would you call what y'all are talking about limerence? And I'm just going to give a side note that limerence is that phase of dating someone when you're kind of in the pink cloud, and what it's sometimes what we describe as being in love, but it's based on chemicals rather than reality. And so she was asking if that is just kind of a normal part of dating, or if this is more like a far extreme end of the mental health spectrum. And what I would say is, I think there's some of this that's pretty normal for most people, that I don't think this means someone has a mental health issue because they fall in love with someone. I'm putting that in quotes, in love with someone right away. But this person was asking, she said that she's definitely seen people where the object of their affection, it was pretty clear that that person wasn't available, or that they just viewed it as a friendship, but that the one person viewed it as something more. And I think this happens a lot when lesbians fall in love with straight women.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. And, we've probably, many of us in our younger years, earned some toaster ovens from that situation.
That reference alone tells you how old we are. Yes, young lesbians don't even know what that means.
And for those that don't know what that means, when you actually are the first person to bring out or have a relationship with a straight woman, then you get a toaster oven as your prize. And
that is an early Ellen DeGeneres reference, if I'm remembering that correctly. Yep. And so, but I also think this thing happens where, as a lesbian or a queer woman, you meet someone, you think they're fantastic, and you start to fall for them. This person's straight. They're not thinking there's anything romantic. They're thinking you're their new best friend. And they're kind of blindsided when they realize that you have romantic feelings for them. So it's generally a pretty sticky situation if you try to start a romantic relationship with someone who identifies as heterosexual.
I think this topic is fascinating. Maybe we should do some more on this. But the thing that's in play out there when you're around a straight woman and you become best friends with the straight woman, and that they are actually going to likely have a very different experience with you as their friend than they have with their other friends. You are going to take them emotionally to a new place that likely probably feels really good and special to them, but don't mistake the fact that it feels really good to them and special to them as I also want to crawl in bed naked with you. And there can be a lot of interesting signals that go back and forth in that. And I think I've been in that where both people are having a fabulous, a unique experience in the building of a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot going on emotionally for both of them. And if you're the gay girl, you got to be careful if part of the next step for you is you want to reach in there and drag them into the side.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out so good.
No, don't do that. It's not a good idea. Yeah. I'm thinking in particular about, I've had clients in that situation that identified as straight women, and they developed a friendship with a lesbian woman. And then they were sort of shaken up and questioning themselves and questioning their relationship. And in the end, they were really glad that they didn't go down that path. Like, they're overall happily married. So yeah, if you're the lesbian in that situation, you might create a fantasy around your straight friend, but don't wreck someone's life.
I do feel like some people may disagree with this. You can shout if you do, but I do believe we actually own more responsibility in that area because we understand that side of the street, and you're actually trying to bring somebody over to something that they don't understand or are not familiar with. And I feel like it's on us to probably take the higher path in that situation.
Yeah, I think so too. It relates a little bit to something that Rachel, you and I were talking about on a personal level the other day, and that's about coaches. And there's an inherent power differential. If you are the coach and one of your players, even if that player is your same age, you're in a power position over that person. If you are the lesbian and someone else is a straight girl, I'm using that term tongue in cheek, a straight woman, you are inherently in a power position because you know the ropes of this and she doesn't. And so don't abuse your power by, I mean, it's a little bit predatory, actually. And again, I think you're right. We'll get some comments about this and people that disagree with us, but you have to just take a lot of care in that scenario to not abuse your experience because it does create a power differential.
It does. And I mean, I'm going to put it in, like I said, we may get a lot off of this, but the other part of that conversation we had was understanding when you are the person that is in the power seat, and it's an aphrodisiac. It is it's a very dynamic feeling, and knowing that, I mean, it feels very good. And I think a lot of people make up excuses along the way. Like you see it also in huge age differences in relationships of, I think as we get older, the bigger age differences don't necessarily fall into play there. I mean, I think you can be 50 and somebody can be, 35, and they're a grown person who's probably had a lot of experience.
Right.
But if you're 24 and a 45-year-old is trying to match up with you, there's going to be a power differential there. It just is. Money, experiences, all those things that may feel great to the 24-year-old. If you're the other person, I mean, Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily what we were talking about in the episode itself, but I think it's all really important and really relevant. But the idea is that you may get enamored with someone, you may, be creating this whole fantasy in your head when that person's not even on the same page as you at all. So pay attention, ask some questions, have some conversations, but don't make an assumption and start planning your wedding when you have no idea if this person's even romantically interested in you.
You probably haven't even talked about whether you should wear all white when you probably should, because nobody's a virgin. Either wear all white, or whether you're going to go with color, or is somebody going to wear a dress and the other person is going to wear a tux? I mean, that's a lot to go for this conversation.
That's right. You could fantasize about those wedding plans all day long. Well, thank you for listening to our after party episode and for listening to our podcast in general. The Dateable AF podcast is where we help you find your happy ending.
And be bold and be kind. And for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable
AF.